Good to see you, man.
Great to see you, my brother.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time. I'm here with Mike Rosenfeld today, and he's a peak performance and mindset coach and breathwork therapist and the Flow Code ambassador to the United States. He works with world champion professional athletes, CEOs, and teams, and providing them with tools, essentials, and things about personal development and success in their life. So I just wanted to take a quick moment to meet with you and talk about personal development, what it's meant to you, and how you kind of got started on this journey. And I'd love to just let you introduce yourself.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that introduction. And I'll continue with a little bit about myself. Well, first of all, it's great to be here with you, Patrick. So I'm excited to do this interview with you. And so my personal development journey began when I was a kid. From the time I was 14 years old, I've lived on my own. I was involved in gangs at a very early age. I grew up in an amazing family with two loving parents who are still my best friends today. But when I was a kid, we moved from Philadelphia to Miami, and it was a hard move for me. I didn't really fit in. And for that reason, I started losing who I was to try to fit in. And ultimately, I got involved in gangs and was put into programs for juvenile offenders. And so where the personal development journey really began was when I was 15. I had done something and I was afraid for my life. And being afraid for my life, I wanted to be able to prove to myself, to God, to the world that I deserved to be alive. And so I looked at the things that was working in my life and the things that weren't. Like the things where I was trying to fit in and I was trying to look tough and was that who I think I needed to be in order to prove my merit in this world, that I deserve to be alive. So I gave up a lot of those old behaviors and I began to experience myself in a new experience. And that experience was one that I felt free because I found that the more that I was giving up, the more I was reconnecting to who I am.
Okay.
And in that process, I began to really be easy for other people to talk to. And I developed a lot more authentic friendships, and I learned to love myself a lot more. Now, I'm using these words looking back on that experience. While in that experience, it was just like, oh my God, I don't have to carry all this weight of trying to be someone. I get to really be myself, and in that, it feels good, but not only does it feel good, like, people like me, and I like myself. Good. So that's really where it began.
Yeah, and you mentioned authenticity. What does authenticity mean to you? Because I think it's so, people are kind of faking it in this world. They're like, I want to be this person, but they're not really stepping into their own power. So what does authenticity mean to you?
That's the word.
Okay.
Power.
Authenticity
means to me power. Period. And it's that simple. It's almost like if you're in an amphitheater and you're standing in the center of the stage, because of the acoustics, your voice will carry tremendously. It will go all the way to the end of the amphitheater and come back. The place will become full with your voice and you will feel filled. It's fulfilled. But if you move over just a little bit to the left, you can scream and you can try as hard as you want and your voice is going to get sucked up by the acoustics. It's the same thing. When we're in alignment or when we're in our true self or when we're authentic, whatever words we use to describe that, we are in our power. And in that space, the right people will align and the wrong people will decline.
Right.
And that's fine. But when we're trying to fit in and we're trying to be someone else, we can scream as loud as we want. And maybe people will like us, but we will never feel our power because we'll realize that they're liking our mask. They're not liking our truth. So it will never be as fulfilling.
What would you tell somebody because there's so much fear of judgment in this world. It's like if I start sharing my true, authentic self on camera or on my social media, that I'm going to be judged. And what would you tell somebody that I believe that I had to overcome a lot in order to be able to go put myself on camera by not having that fear of judgment and actually to step into it versus and not be afraid of it? Because I believe everything you want is on the other side of fear. So what would you tell somebody that's afraid to start sharing more of their authentic self?
In short, I would say, let's first learn how the brain works. Let's understand the way the mind works. And the way the mind works is we have roughly 77,000 thoughts happening every single day. So on average, we have 77 thoughts having every single.
That's a lot of thoughts.
That's a lot of thoughts, right?
Yeah.
We're constantly thinking.
Yeah, constantly
right?
thinking.
And what we've learned is that between 88 and 92% on average are reoccurring thoughts from the day before. So where are those thoughts even coming from?
Mm-hmm.
They're coming from our belief systems, right?
Yes.
So throughout our life, we develop these belief systems. The first belief system I developed, and I've done a lot of work on myself, was that I must not be important. So I had something happen in my life, and I interpreted that event to mean that I'm not important. And what happens is, once we develop belief systems, we see the world through the lens of that belief system.
Yeah.
So if I believe I'm not important, you could be nodding your head at me, but I'm interpreting it to mean like, this guy just wants to get the heck out of it. He wants this interview to finish. It may have nothing to do with the truth.
Right. That's not the truth, but that's the way you're seeing the world through.
That's a belief.
Yeah.
And so the first thing is, okay, so if we understand that we have these beliefs, and these beliefs are creating our reality, but they don't necessarily have anything to do with the truth, the question is, do you like the belief system that you're in? And do you want to change it? So when it comes to like talking on Instagram or talking on a public platform, when we're saying, okay, I can't be myself, well, where did you learn that?
Yeah.
Because you were born into this world yourself. And then throughout the course of your life, you were being yourself, and maybe your parents corrected you. And it came from love, right? Likely, right? And in fact, from the time a child is born to the time they turn 5, in America, on average, they've been told no or don't do that over 5,000 times.
Wow.
So I'm being authentic.
Yeah.
And the people who are around me are saying, no, don't do that. Okay, I'm no longer center stage. It's not safe to be center stage.
Right.
So I move off center. And then I learn to try to adjust and be someone that I'm not. So the key is like, let's come back to center and realize the first judgment that's happening is not the fear of judging other people or other people judging us. It's the judgments we have of ourselves, which are based on the belief systems that we've developed that have nothing to do with truth. So the key is to like, okay, so if I am thinking certain things about myself or believing certain things about myself that have nothing to do with truth, then the question is, who am I?
Yeah.
And how do I give myself permission to allow that person to be fully expressed?
Because if you've been doing this stuff over the course of your life, you don't even sometimes know who you are when you step out of that belief system back into, I believe, a more empowered belief system. I had to like change a lot of beliefs in order to be an entrepreneur. Like it takes a lot of changing beliefs of like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this every day. I'm supposed to be getting up and going to work every day to, oh, I gotta like do all this other stuff that I didn't even know I had to do. So it just takes a lot of like believing in yourself, I think, first, and actually make it happen.
So a lot of, what do they call it, bullshits? Like all these bullshits, like I should this, I should that, like these standards that are put upon us by our society or by our parents or just by our own experience that really oftentimes are heavy and not, so we know when we're authentic, when we feel light, you know?
Yeah.
Heavy things sink, light things float. And when we're giving ourselves permission to be ourselves, we're in a very light space.
And then, you know, if you're, what I want to say is like people like fake it sometimes, and then you have to like remember your lies, remember things you said in the past, and then it's just way easier to be yourself the whole time. It's just way easier, wouldn't you say?
I would say that, and what's really interesting about that is one of my clients came to me. He owns a company that's well over $500 million, right?
Yeah.
He founded it in his own garage. And we're sitting there having a conversation. And in that conversation, he's like, Mike, I have an opportunity to work with this other company. And this is like one of the big like billion-dollar companies. He was like, the only thing that needs to happen is I need to meet with their board of directors and they have to interview me. And then he went on to ask me, do you think they'll approve of me? And in that moment, I felt this heaviness, and I was like, no. And he was like shocked. And he was like, wait a second, you're my coach. You're not supposed to say no.
Right.
And I'm like, well, you're asking me, so the most important thing is that you're at least understanding where I am. Because if I'm only telling you what you want to hear, that's not authentic of me, and that's not going to work.
Right.
But what I think has nothing to do with reality. So let me ask you a couple questions to see where you are, because I'm not the one in the interview. You are, right? And it's like, all right, fair enough. The first question I asked him was, can you imagine that interview taking place and you navigate it in such a way that they love you and you love them and it goes through? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, cool, describe that to me. So I had him describe that. And I said, wow, see, it doesn't matter what I think, you're already on the right track, right? So forget my thoughts. Another question. I said, could you imagine 8 months go by, and throughout those 8 months, you're working with them, they're working with you, things are going really well, like, great decision you both made to work together.
Yes.
And he was like, absolutely, I can see that. I'm like, yeah, amazing, see? Tell me about that. And I had him describe that. And as he's describing it, he's connecting neural pathways, and like he's really beginning to see it himself. And that's what I wanted. I wanted him to have some clarity. But then I was like, fine, you can see them approving, you can see it being successful. I only have one more question. He was like, what's the question? It's like, well, I want you to imagine 8 months from today who you've become.
Okay.
I said, describe him. And he starts describing that guy. I'm like, oh, what's the difference between that guy and who you are today? Well, this guy has a lot more confidence. I'm like, okay, well, why is he more confident? Well, he's got different routines. He's doing this. And he went through this whole list. And I said, I get it. And he was like, what? I said, I know why. I said, no. He was like, what? I said, well, they don't want you. They want him. Right?
Right.
He was like, well, what do I do? I said, well, you already are him. And he goes, so what do I do? I said, well, be now who you wish to become. You don't become that guy by hoping to become that guy. He goes, do you mean fake it till you make it? And I'm like, no. When you say fake it, that's being someone who you're not.
Right.
If your heart, which the mind lives in duality, should I this, should I that? Am I this, am I that? We live in our heads and we tie ourselves up in knots. The mind can be convinced. The heart cannot. Nobody can say, love that painting, and all of a sudden they're like, yes, I love it. Or love that person, I love that. No, it's like, it's either real for you or it's not.
Right.
And if this is what you truly want, that's because it's real for you. And if you can see yourself as being successful in this, that's because that's who you really are. So instead of trying to be someone that you're not, let's embody the characteristics of you really are. It's a big difference between what you were saying, not to do, which is faking it, to actually being it.
I love that.
Yeah.
So good. And I know we don't have a short time today, but one thing other that you talked about too at that talk we did a few weeks ago, you said walking in a joy. And what does it mean to walk in a joy and show up every day in joy and happiness? Because I think that's so important, because it's not that I want to be afraid of challenges in my life, and some of us want to be afraid of feeling anxiety and stuff like that. But I think if we don't learn how to come at things with joy, we're going to have a lot more resistance.
Totally.
So how do we walk in joy more? How do we feel more excitement towards our projects, towards our relationships?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and it's really the nature of my work, specifically on myself first, and then with people who I work with. When we're in joy, right? Can you fake joy?
No.
It's real, right? Okay. And what does joy feel like? It feels good, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can't fake something that feels good, and the reason it feels good is because it's aligned with who you are, right?
Yeah.
So let's first have an understanding that joy is an alignment. We're in alignment when we're in joy, right? Okay. In other words, we like the taste of something. If we like it, it's joyful. Or we can use the word fulfilled or joy. We can interchange these words, right? Okay. Well, that ultimately is the North Star. So if I'm walking down a path and I have two options, right? I can imagine what going down this way looks like, and I can experience the emotions of it, even throughout the challenges. Are the challenges bringing me to a higher level? Are they bringing me to a space of joy and fulfillment? Or are those challenges causing me to go further back, right? Into a downward spiral. And that would be our guiding post. Like that would be our North Star. That would be our compass, to allow ourselves to aim from a place of joy. Now, when we are in a specific state, right? So let's say I'm in a place of anger, right?
Right.
Okay. And I want to get to joy. Well, you'll hear certain people be like, and I see this in I work with a lot of world champion athletes, and I'll hear like some of their coaches, like if the athlete is not in a good space, say, take a deep breath, right? So you're in a bad space and you're told to take a deep breath. But if you take a deep breath in a bad space, right, it usually looks like this, right?
Right, you're tensing up.
You're tensing up, right? So you're actually exacerbating what that negative or unpleasant emotion is.
Okay.
As opposed to adapting to it, allowing it, and then walking ourselves over into a more powerful place. So here's the metaphor. You have a child, your inner child, or you have a real child, right?
Yep.
And your child comes to you and they're like, Daddy, I need you, I need you, I need you, I need you, right? And they're in a frantic space. And you're in that moment very busy. So you say to your child, go to your room because they're annoying you. And you need to be in a space of joy, right? Okay, so you send that person who you love, your child, into their room. What happens?
They are sad and they cry and things like that, right?
Right. So
By themselves.
By themselves. But you love them. So how does that affect you?
Also affects you, and it doesn't make you feel good either.
Lose-lose,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so we're pushing something away. We're pushing that inner child away. We're making it wrong for feeling that way. So I'm walking down the aisle in a championship fight with one of my fighters, and I'm like, how you feeling, man? And if he's like, I feel great, but he's freaking out inside, it's like he's throwing that child into a room,
right?
And he's saying, go away, but that child's not going away. They're freaking out. So those emotions are becoming louder. He's suppressing it, and it's actually getting louder, and it's beginning to dominate him. So the key is, in that moment, let's be okay with how we're feeling.
Right.
Okay, I feel anxious. I feel angry. I'm okay with that. Why wouldn't I feel anxious or angry? I'm walking down the aisle. There's 60,000 people screaming my name. There's a lot of expectation there. Stakes are on the line. I win this, and I'm making millions. And if I lose it, I made millions, but I'm not going to get that endorsement deal. There's a lot at stake, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a right to be right. It's right for me to say, you know what, I don't want to focus on that, but that's not the effective way of thinking. So we're being right at our own expense. The effective way of looking at it is, you know what? Step one, this is how I'm feeling, and it's okay.
Okay.
So you embrace it.
Yep, embrace your current state.
Embrace your current state. Step two, part of embracing that current state is to really own it. And what that means is, in that current state, how am I breathing? Okay, I'm anxious, right? So breathe anxious.
Okay.
Connect before you direct.
Okay.
So I'm breathing anxious. What's my posture? I'm contracted, right? So I go there, right? Okay. What are my thoughts? Okay, I allow myself to think these things, right? And I'm walking down the aisle. Now, we've trained this, okay? So it's not like this is happening out of the blue. Like he's prepared for this moment.
Yep. Okay,
so the reason we're having this conversation is so people can utilize these tools and use them so they can prepare for your moment. Prepare for your moment. Step one is embrace it. It's okay. Step two is to connect to it through your breathing, your body language, your posture, and your thoughts. Step three is connect to your desired outcome. Visualize it for a moment. And imagine the feeling you get, joy, as you win.
Okay,
right?
Yeah, I can imagine that, yeah.
And now begin to walk the breathing over from anxious into joy. Shift the body language into joy. Slowly, right? Well, we have a long walk to that ring.
Yeah.
And even in the ring, you have time to do it, right?
Yeah.
And now you're not in your head. You're in the moment. You're no longer in that space of worrying what other people are thinking. You're in that space of drawing that energy in, using it, and converting it in from anxiety into joy. And you begin to slowly walk it over instead of resisting it. So two things. Joy is the compass that we use.
Okay.
Does this bring me joy? No. Does this? Yes. And as I go through these challenges in this space, how do I allow myself to not make myself wrong for feeling that? That would be very inauthentic.
Yeah.
Because I'm authentically feeling it.
Yeah, you're trying to tell yourself you're not feeling something that you are feeling, which is what we do all the time. We shouldn't be doing that, I don't think.
Don't cry, little Johnny. You know, there's adults here. Children are meant to be seen and not heard, little Johnny. You know, it's like we learn these things.
Yeah.
They're counterproductive.
Okay. Awesome. And lastly, you continue to tell me, like, and we were just actually doing a workout, and you're like, smile. Why should people smile and, like, use their physiology to, like, help them walk into joy?
It's the right question to always ask ourselves. Like, how much time do we spend in worry? how much time do we spend in worry? Are you worried right now? Like, how much time do we spend in worry? And when we're worrying, how often is what we're worrying about even going to come to fruition?
Yep.
Most times it's not, right? And physiologically, what happens when we worry? Our body produces adrenaline and norepinephrine and tons of cortisol, right?
Yep.
So we're producing these chemicals that we actually become addicted to.
Yeah, I think so.
So we know the science says, like, we become addicted to these harmful chemicals. And this is why it's hard for people to break patterns, right? Okay, so I'm having all these worry thoughts and experiences that are causing me to stay stuck in a cycle and become addicted to that. And these things aren't even going to come to fruition unless I just create them.
Right.
So if we're worrying for no reason, why not smile for a reason? And what's the reason to smile? It releases serotonin, right? Okay. So all suffering comes from our inability or unwillingness to expand and let go. When we're worried, we're contracted and we're holding on. Okay. When we're smiling, feel it. We're expanding and we're moving on from a moment and entering into the unknown with a curiosity and an openness. And this is where happiness and success come from.
Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it. And it's been so great to meet you and get to know you.
My brother, I got a couple questions for you.
For sure.
Okay. What is important to you in terms of doing these interviews? Like, what are you hoping your readers get from this, or your viewers get from this?
I want to see more people stepping into personal development. I told you, like, I want it to be cool. I don't want it to be like you're afraid to learn about your own beliefs. I don't want it to be you're afraid to step in to your power and like your authenticity. I don't want people to like, there's a quote, and have you ever heard of the YouTube channel Yes Theory?
No.
It's a really great YouTube channel. They like help people step past their comfort zone. That's the seeking discomfort is the whole thing. And they say
seeking discomfort.
Seeking discomfort.
Gold.
It's amazing, and they've built a huge community around this whole idea. And they go and they jump out of the airplanes with their Uber drivers, and they go and like abandon themselves with no money for a whole day in a random city and rely on the kindness of strangers. And there's so much discomfort in that idea, but then on the other side of that discomfort is joy. And actually, Amar, he had challenged Will Smith, and they jumped out of a helicopter over the Grand Canyon. And as Will is jumping, he's like, it was like fear to bliss inside of a second. And that's what I want to see more of, is like people stepping past that fear and realizing everything they want is on the other side of that fear. There's joy on the other side of that fear. There's authenticity on the other side of that fear. But they don't even know that they might want to go down that path.
Wow. From fear to bliss.
Yeah.
So what do you see as a possibility for people and the world, maybe even a collective consciousness, when people begin to really adapt what you're putting forth?
I've already seen it happen in so many ways through this YouTube channel, through events that I've been to. I literally live in a world which does have much more love. It does have much more growth. Like, we just got out of a workshop and we're pushing each other and doing new ideas, right?
We went hard, baby!
We went hard. And we're expanding other people's minds to breathwork, because your friend, he had not done a ton of breathwork, it sounded like this morning. So we're expanding, and I didn't even know about this 3 or 4 years ago. So we're just expanding each other's minds. And we're living in a world that some people are so afraid to even like go into, but they don't even know that that's the world that they've been looking for their whole life. Because I was there. I moved to New York City. I was struggling to find friends and community. And then after I did it, I started realizing that this was exactly what I wanted for my whole life.
Guys, this is why I took the time to meet with you, because I love where you are, I love where you're going, I love what you're sharing, and it's been an honor to share this space with you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for this interview, and I look forward to continuing to connect.
All right,
talk to you soon.
Thank you guys for
tuning in. Bye, guys. See ya.